Travelers, and welcome to another episode of Tales of Teyvat, a Genshin Lore Podcast. Last week, we talked about the supernatural abilities of the Ley Lines and all of these strange disorders that surround them.
This week, we're fighting that Geo whale, the rocky desert frog, our angry boy, Azhdaha. And you're not my sweet baby Oz. He's a sweetie pie. It's Azhdaha.
Are you looking for... Wait, what are you looking for? Where are you? Who are you? When did you get imprisoned? What's happening? TalesofTeyvat.com.
Our site also includes links to our past seasons and special episodes, artist spotlights from the community for every episode, wallpapers to download, including some of the new Fontaine ones, a new resource section that we're currently creating, and some of our favorite Genshin merch.
Finally, feel free to email us at talesoftevatpod@gmail.com to let us know what you think of this week's episode and what topics you'd like to see in the future. Additionally, you can follow us on Instagram, Tales of Teyvat Pod, or Twitter, Tales of Teyvat, where you can see some of our goofy commentary, birthday lore for all the characters, and whenever we're doing a event like a Twitch stream. That being said, there is no streaming going on right now because we are talking about Azhdaha. I hate fighting Azhdaha still to this day. I think he is my least favorite of the limited weekly bosses.
I love it. I love it so much.
I love it.
Yeah, you're going to fight me on this, though. I know we always call him Azhdaha. It's not.
Yeah.
What is it?
In the story, they tend to say Azhdaha, like with a hard G, but it's not. It's Azhdaha. Think of Zhongli. It's that same zh, so is Azhdaha. Not Azhdaha. But, you know, we're always learning that we're saying things wrong. Might as well add that one into it.
That is true. Mostly because languages are hard. Pronunciation are real hard.
I've been walking around saying Azhdaha all day. Azhdaha.
Azhdaha. Azhdaha.
It's fun to say.
I will say that Travelers and Geo Archon, please forgive us if we pronounce it wrong, as we are just being told now. I normally have time to prepare for my mispronunciations.
No, that was the fun part. Azhdaha. Because I'm still going to call him Azhdaha. Like, it's not going to change anything.
I mean, I named my baby boy after him. Well, actually, no. Y'all helped me name him. So we named him Oz.
What you're saying is we named him wrong.
Nah, because I just call him Oz. Which, like, AZH. Which, what's funny is I have a picture of him in my work office. And a lot of people are like, what is that? Where'd you find this photo? I'm like, that's actually my gecko. His name is Oz. And they freak out. And I am the gecko lady of this law firm. And I'm like, I am proud. I am very proud. I'm getting 3 more. Orlando Repticon. Hello?
Soon you will have all the Adepti.
I will. You know what? I will.
But Adepti aside, because we are not talking about an Adepti today. We're talking about a possible Vishap, possible dragon, possible Sovereign, enemy of the Morax people.
Sovereign, by the way.
No.
Yes,
No.
it's Sovereign.
I will just not say it. I will say the 7 Dragon Overlords. So, we meet Azhdaha in Zhongli's second storyline or first storyline?
First. Because his... No, wait.
Is it second?
I think
Yeah,
it's
no,
a second.
Second, because the first one is Salt Bitch. Salt Lady.
Which, like, first off, Zhongli gets 2 story quests, and they're both equally depressing.
Yeah.
I mean, he's lived a long time.
The developers like wanted him to be like the lonely one.
Well, they want him to be Peepaw, but now that's Nouvellette.
I
Yeah.
mean, he couldn't be any lonelier than Farina was.
I don't know. And that's true, because Venti kept bringing him wine.
Exactly. And he had his son.
His son
Cow.
was not there the whole time. I mean, Venti wasn't there the whole time either. Anyway, I digress. So we find out about Azhdaha. He is known as a Vishap, Dragon Lord. There's a lot of names that go for him. But basically, before we deep dive into him, all you have to know is that he is a Geo Dragon type that is locked up in a cage underground, specifically under a big tree.
Mm-hmm. Just try to remember which mountain it's next to.
Oh, it's next to Mount Hulao, I think.
He's underneath Mount Hulao.
He's like a little to the right of Mount Hulao.
And that's where the big tree isn't up on the mountain. It's on the ground.
Right. So his tree and his domain is right to the right of Mount Hulao if you're looking at the map.
Okay.
I honestly would say that his boss battle probably happens under Mount Hulao, ironically enough, even though it's supposed to be under this damn tree, which the tree has a name too. The tree is the Dragon Queller, which I, for some reason, thought was a sword. So negative 10 points to Amanda.
It sounds like a sword.
Right?
Why did I think it was the other name, Nantianmen?
So Non-Tianmen is like the location which within Minlin, which is like the sub-region.
Did you ever notice that the one area of the place to the right of Mount Hulao looks like a booby on the map?
I gotta see this. Titties?
Al perked right up.
Look, I see a nipple.
Yeah.
Is that?
Yeah, that looks like the whole boob.
Yeah,
The whole boob.
the whole boob.
It's a uni boob, but it's a boob.
I mean,
We got buttholes, we got boobs. We got it all.
we do. We got titters.
We're pivoting in 2024 to boobies, away from the buttholes.
No, but we love buttholes. Play with the buttholes.
But yeah, so Liyue can be divided up into a bunch of sub areas, and one of them is Minlin. And within Minlin, there are other sub areas, and Nantianmen is one of them, and that's where Azhdaha originally was. And then he was let free, and then he fought with Morax all the way from the chasm up to Mount Hulao, which is why there's like a valley through Nantianmen now. It's a whole thing. We'll get into that. But before we do, we're going to be talking a lot about dragons, and we're going to be talking a lot about Vishaps. So I think it's important to just lay some boundaries of what exactly they are, because they're a little different, but they can be the same. So a Vishap, according to the Genshin Wiki, this is its definition of a Vishap in Teyvat, is a species of dragon-like creatures that once followed each of the 7 Dragon Lords with their corresponding elements, and were formerly the dominant race of the world. Over time, a Vishap would evolve into a true dragon if they were like pure of heart, basically.
So they're the original citizens of Teyvat
Yes.
before their genocide.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And we know another of like a medium-sized Vishap that we can also fight in Liyue as well. I mean, there's the little tiny ones that are rolling around all over the place who are adorable because when you fight them, they then go on their back like, ah!
They go full Sonic, and it's amazing. I love
It's
it.
so cute.
Should we just let everyone know that like our inside way of saying it is Vishap?
I was about to say, can we say it's just a Vishap? Vishap.
Yeah, we
rolls
do
off the
call
tongue
it Vishap.
Vishap.
We were like, is it Vishap? Is it Vishap? But then we just started calling it Vishap.
Yeah.
Vishap.
And sometimes, yeah, we add on a few extra.
I mean, we
Vishap.
did the same thing with the Golden Wolf Lord.
I think that Enjo calls it a Vishap. Not that he's to be trusted at all.
I was
but
going to say, Enjo burned down a library. I'm supposed to trust him.
that guy.
But it's interesting because many, many moons ago, obviously, the primordial one came down, laid the beat down on the Dragon Overlords, kicked them to the curb, and then we find out that the Geo Dragon / the oldest Geo Vishap was locked underground, and all of them were locked underground. There's a whole like situation going on there. But not trying to get too deep yet, the 7 Dragon Overlords, as Brandon said, were the original leaders of Teyvat, but they also were the original citizens, the little Vishaps. And one day their goal was to become the dragon of their element, basically. Their goal in life was to be able to take over.
To become the Dragon King.
Right.
Well, the Dragon King of their element.
It's basically like the Dragon King was Celestia, and then the 7 Archons were the 7 Dragon Overlords.
Truly.
But there was a Dragon King, though, too, wasn't there? Nibelung?
Nibelung?
Nibba?
You belong?
Nibby.
Nibelungalung.
Let's take a dive into Zhongli's story quest and what we know on the surface about Azhdaha. I feel like that's like a Sino joke because he's like locked underground.
He's not underwater, though, so you get a half a giggle.
No.
It's only a huh, not a ha ha.
So Zhongli's second story quest takes place when we first are hanging out with him if I'm remembering correctly.
It's actually a commission. It's a commission that we get through Catherine.
Why is Catherine always giving us these things?
Yeah. We kind of go over, we're like, hey, you got anything for us? And she's like, sure, go talk to Uncle Di. Won't give us really any more information and kind of makes it seem a little sus. So we're like, okay. And we go on over and go find him. And he starts telling us what the current situation is.
And what's the current situation?
So, and his situation is that he is looking for 4 lost miners. And not children miners, but miners with the axe.
So confusing.
A pickaxe.
Yes. They have gone missing over in the mountains. They just don't know where they could possibly be. So he's like, I got this rock expert to come over and help me as well, along with you. And Paimon's like, rock expert? We know the rock expert. And like, we go through this whole thing, like Paimon's just like, no, that guy can't know anything. And we go and get Zhongli and we're like, come on over, this dude needs some help with some rocks. But then we meet his rock guy, who is Kunjin, and we can see from Zhongli's face that he knows him a little bit. And Kunjin is like, did I meet you before? Did I meet you at the funeral parlor? And he's like, wait, I've never been to the funeral parlor. So they have this like awkward little situation. And then they just start like throwing facts about rocks to see if like who's the smartest, which is just funny because we know that Zhongli is the Geo Archon and obviously knows the most.
And the ore that this guy is asking about is Dragonfall, right?
Yeah, he starts saying that he's looking for Dragonfall. It's kind of not related to the miners as much as it's his own personal kind of thing. So Zhongli says, well, while we're in this expedition, I'll make sure to keep an eye out for it for you.
And I don't know if they ever come out and say it in the quest. I don't know if I button mashed too quickly, but Dragonfall is an ore that was created by the fight between Morax and Azhdaha. So Zhongli's like radar must have really been going off because he's like, how the fuck do you know about this?
They say it, Zhongli explains it at the very end to us, that Dragonfall, that, like you said, his radar went up when he was like, wait a second, why would this person know about Dragonfall? Because not only did it was created during that fight, but then it was mined out of existence when humanity took it, because, you know, humans, we don't care. So we went over to the mountains and we mined the crap out of it. So it's not around. And that's been like hundreds of years. There's some like old school Liyue like rock people who occasionally talk about it. But for this like young blacksmith guy to know it is really out of the ordinary.
So what happens next then with Zhongli and his new friend?
His newfound friend. So at that point, they kind of make it over to the mountains because they're kind of like, you know, we need to go see for ourselves kind of like what's going on and see if we can kind of find these people. So this little group of adventurers head over to Minlin to go look for the miners. And we start kind of, you know, doing our due diligence, kind of looking for things. Like we find like t-shirts and pants. Like, so we know that like the miners didn't take their stuff, like the stuff that they had there for the amount of time had kind of just stayed there. So it didn't really look like they packed up and left, because even Zhongli says like they're kind of young. The miners are young. The miners are miners, maybe. So he's kind of like, you know, maybe they just went to another mountain. They're like, even Uncle Di is like, nah, that's just not these kind of guys. So Kunjin's like, well, let's see if we could, you know, if I can read the rocks. And we're just like, excuse me?
We're like, what are you gonna? We're like, Zhongli, is that something you can even do?
Yeah. Okay, side note, it's funny. He goes over to Coral Lapis and touches it and gets to see basically these 4 miners walking up these stairs. And then he tells us about it. Here's the side note though. Coral Lapis isn't a rock. They make a big thing in Genshin that Coral Lapis is a flower, because if you are co-oping with people and you break rocks, you're mining ore, you all get to share it. You don't get to share Coral Lapis just like a flower.
Okay. Can I comment on that real quick?
Sure.
I think they made that up because it is an ascension material. They didn't want people to just like hardcore farm that.
Oh, because like you don't need it to ascend. You don't need like ore to ascend anyone.
They were like, what can we make that's almost as annoying as violet grass?
Yeah. So it's a special rock that grows flowers, maybe.
It's like the bloom of the ore.
Yeah, the bloom of the ore.
it kind of makes sense with like what's going on with Azhdaha's like actual model, because when we look at it, yeah, he's a dragon with no wings, or at least wings he does not use, but he's got a whole tree as his tail.
Yeah.
Got a whole tree as his tail.
Yeah,
he
so maybe it's
does.
like a flowering tree, and the core lapis is the flowering.
I gotta see this.
You know the
when you
tree
fight-
tail, yeah, when you fight him.
He sticks his tail up out of the
Out of the
ground.
ground. Watch him whip. And watch him.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought we were talking about Zhongli.
Oh,
I was like, where does Zhongli have a tree?
You're like, where does he have a tail?
Yeah, I totally thought you were talking about Zhongli. That was my bad.
You're like, did I miss something? It's like it's right there in his pants, Tiff.
Yeah. I was like, I know that he's got a flowy cape.
a very dry branch, very limp branch. Peapon needs some Viagra.
So Kunjin.
I just want to say though, again, I can only imagine when this guy, because as the traveler, like this guy goes over and touches the core lapis and sees a vision, and we're like, what the? I like wonder what was going through Zhongli. He's like, are you a new Archon? Are you from Celestia? What like what
Yeah.
is happening?
He was like, excuse me, you can do what? I was kind of like, well, Zhongli, can you do that? You're the Archon.
Zhongli, show us what you can do with
But
a
he
rock.
does, yeah, he does tell us later, when we do learn a little bit more at the end of this, and he's kind of explaining everything, kind of doing the recap. He does say that stones hold memories.
Everything holds memories in this game.
Yeah. Including the coral lapis. Yeah, so Kunjun touches the rock or coral lapis, kind of sees these dudes, and then he's like, there's a little kid. And we're like, why is there a little kid in the mines? And as we go on and we talk to somebody else and ask them about like what's going on with, have you seen the miners? And this one person says, yeah, I did. I saw them 6 weeks ago or something like that, walking with this blue-haired little girl. And they're just like, that just seems so strange. There shouldn't, this is a dangerous area. There shouldn't be a little kid. And why are these 4 grown-ass adults walking around with a little kid?
You mean the 4 miners?
The 4 miners.
This is Genshin. A kid walking through a dangerous place alone is very common, actually.
True.
I mean, do we remember a child story quest with Tusser? That was child endangerment to a T.
Tusser literally took a boat from Shiznaya on his own, and no one even knew he was gone.
Child endangerment, child neglect.
Child
like
with an E was
Kaya.
also being neglected. He needed love.
Yeah, his parents should be arrested.
Shield day. Night shield day. The poor boy. Anyway, Tiff, go back to this endangered child with minors.
Yes. So as we continue talking to people and we see more people are saying like, yeah, I saw this little kid, this little blue-haired little girl. And Kunjin is kind of like touching, feeling up the rocks, looking for clues. It ends up leading us over to this ginormous tree. And this tree has all blue crystals kind of running through its core. And we kind of go up to it and there's a tablet, which looks like a headstone, even though they call it a tablet, but I swear, I always think somebody's just buried there.
I mean, technically.
Yeah, I guess so. Kunjin goes up to it and touches it to get his, to do his little thingy. And he kind of like gasps. And they're like, are you all right?
Same.
Like, are you okay? Is this fine? And he's just like, oh, I don't know. Something happened. And they're like, did you see anything? Do we know where the little girl is? Do we know anything? And he's like, it's not coming clear to me. I don't really know. And at this time, like Zhongli is taking a walk around the tree to kind of find stuff. And he's like, there's a cave over here that hasn't been there. Like this has never been over here. Can we go look at it? So we're like, sure, scary ass cave that's brandy new. Let's go look at that. And as we walk in, we see the 4 miners working their ass off, insanely kind of mining this cave. Like they're like grunting and kind of like animalistic and just totally out of their fucking heads. And they're just going to town. And we see this behind it, this doorway that's kind of like the first time going through the quest, it reminded me of seeing the Adepti homes where you see like that gold kind of so we see that in the background. And once these miners see us, they are not happy. They run over to us and start trying to attack us. They try and like whip the shit out of Paimon up in the air, which is hysterical because she's just like, whoa, I can get around. Which is actually, side note, I forgot to mention it because it's really not really important. But they're like, hey, we should go look at the top of the tree and see if we find anything before they go in this cave. And Paimon's like, hey, why don't you go climb it? And they're like looking at her and she's like, oh shit, I can fly. I guess I should go look.
Climb's exhausting though. Remember that.
It's not flying, it's floating. She's just tooting her way.
Star farts.
I forgot about that. It's just so funny. She's just like, oh shit, that's me. So she gets like almost knocked by these miners that again are like totally crazed and they're going at them. So Zhongli puts his nice force field around us to kind of protect us from the miners. But then behind us comes the evil child.
Without an E. Yeah, let's make that clear.
Because they're both evil.
Yeah.
No.
This one's blue-haired, not red-haired. And she blows a shit ton of wind.
Okay, venti wannabe.
Kind of breaks through Zhongli's like force field because she's kind of in it and ends up opening up the seal, the golden veil that we see. And the next thing we know is we are in front of this ginormous dragon, rocky, vicious looking dude. And that is what we have to then fight. And he is pissed. He is not happy. He starts talking directly to Zhongli, but as Morax, which, as a reminder, Morax and Rex Lapis are Zhongli's other names from back in the day. So Azhdaha starts talking like, you're back here. I hate you. These are not direct quotes. Yeah. These are not the actual words. So we have this fight and we have to actually fight him. And it's probably the longest fight that anybody, when they're in this game the first time, it is probably the longest fight that they've ever had to do. Because it's rough.
It is rough. And I mean, the only other thing that could rival it was Andreas's. I mean, when you have a full Animo and Cryo team and not expecting to fight him,
yes,
it's probably going to take a very long time.
Yeah, the Skara God fight was pretty tough too.
Ooh, yeah.
See, I never did that one on my own. I always made Fiends do it with me.
Well, you did it the first time though, like in story.
Oh, that's right. Sometimes it's a little easier in story.
No, Azhdaha still took me 9,000 years alone though. So,
I remember watching people, like some of our other friends, doing it for hours, just going like trying to get past it.
It was a marathon.
Yeah, you needed a lot of miso soup for that one too.
I was about to say, how much miso soup?
Well, miso soup became a thing because of the Ryan Shogun battle.
You could have used it in that fight too. It would have been helpful.
Oh, I didn't know about it then. I didn't know what a miso was. We were in Liyue.
No, true. So Azhdaha, though, he's still smack talking and he's like, you came back here on your own to the place that you sealed me away. So he's pissed at Zhongli, obviously, for putting this guy behind the seal.
And then we're like, wait, this is Zhongli's ex?
Yeah.
I don't even think it's his ex. I think, well, can I read the Azhdaha description? Because I feel like it encompasses everything of like how angry he is.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, go for it.
An enormous dragon as ancient as the mountain themselves. In an age that has all but faded from memory, he stood shoulder to shoulder with one who ruled over a harbor of stone. But in the end, the two came into conflict, and the dragon was banished to a dark place deep underground. Over the long years of his imprisonment, his power has slowly dissipated. He has also become disfigured from his various kinds of erosion he has been subjected to. The faint rattling of this dragon lord's shackles and his deep, angry growl echo through the bowels of the mountains like memories of a bygone era.
So salty.
He's salty and he's shaking the mountain with his cries.
The burning question is Ozzy the Geo Sovereign?
Well, let's finish the quest. We're never going to get to the end of the quest then.
Yeah, we beat Azhdaha. And all of a sudden, we are faced with the scariest thing of all, which is the blue-haired little girl.
Absolutely.
Whose name is Zhu. And it says, you know how like it always tells you like underneath their name, like something about them, like it'll be like, you know, Emroy of blah, blah, blah. Under Zhu, it says Azhdaha. They are talking to us and we're like totally like carried, like movie carry, like kind of like disassociated, head down, kind of just yelling at us. And then we hear somebody else start yelling from behind us, and the voices sound familiar. And we turn around, and there's Kunjin. And now underneath his name, it says Azhdaha as well. So, and it's like, what? Who the fuck is Azhdaha? Like, where's the rock guy? The monster's gone. We just got this little girl and this guy we've been hanging out with the whole time who's been filling up rocks. He turns out, he tells us, he starts talking and they have their little thing kind of going back and forth between the blue-haired girl and him. And he tells us that he is also a fragment of Azhdaha, and that him and the little girl are basically like a yin and yang. The little girl is the pissed off, eroded Azhdaha, because like that little quote that Al said, he was being faced with erosion because he was so fucking old. His mind was going, he forgot his memories and stuff. And that's actually what brings him to the seal to get sealed up. So he starts to just explain to us basically that as the seal was loosened, Azhdaha was able to create his inside power manifested as this child, which why? A blue-haired little girl with glasses. That's who he is. He kind of gets so angry, Azhdaha turns into a mean-ass kid. And Kunjun, he didn't have enough power to kind of create another one, so he possessed another body. So that's why this is just a regular-ass dude, because he's possessed by Azhdaha. Mm-hmm. He goes on to tell us, too, that, like, he didn't know at first. Like, he didn't realize who he was. And that was kind of why he kind of recognized Zhongli early on. But when he touched the tablet, he was like, shit. I know who I am. Like, it all came like running back to us.
So Ozzy created Zhu, right? Like like that's sort of like the embodiment of his wrath.
Yeah, the mean part, let's call it, I don't remember if a yin and yang, which side's the good and bad, but we'll say that Zhu is the bad side.
And Kunjun is the good side.
The rational side.
Was Kunjun just like a regular person and then just got possessed?
Yep.
Whereas Zhu was created, right?
Yes, Zhu was created. She does not really actually exist.
Right.
He basically created this little girl to get the miners over there. Because who's going to listen to, like, you know, some crazy person? So I guess they would follow a little kid who's lost in the mine.
Yeah.
So as they followed her, she brought them over to the area where the cave now is and had them dig the cave.
And I think a little more of an explanation on that too is that we find out that Azhdaha actually controls the ley lines, which I have a lot of questions about. He has a lot of power over the ley lines.
Which is why I think he's the sovereign.
Yeah.
When he was buried beneath the ground, he slowly was reconnecting with the ley lines, and that's why he's starting to disfigure himself and look like the root of a tree, because he's really kind of grasped to the ley lines. And with the little bit of ley line juice that he was able to get, he made this little girl apparition.
Yeah. At this point, too, Kunjun goes on to continue the story and says Azhdaha was a friend and an ally of Morax. He had a lifespan that far exceeded mankind. He then explains also the whole thing about memories being stored in rocks, and that erosion even gets the rocks. So erosion is basically when you're that old, because we have to remember these guys are like, even Zhongli, even they're thousands of years old. They don't die, but eventually their mind starts to go, kind of like humans. You know, you think about it, like you kind of lose your memory and kind of it's a bit of dementia.
Yeah, I was going to say it's magical dementia.
Yeah. And when this happened to Azhdaha back in the day, he got violent. So he forgot that he lived with mankind. He forgot his contract with Morax, which was to protect the people of Liyue. Instead, he was really pissed about them. And he couldn't, he just didn't remember anything like that.
How does the quest end, though?
So it's kind of like Kunjun kind of just telling all of this stuff and them having this conversation, and kind of Kunjun just saying to Zhu, like, fuck you, you're done. Go back in your little hole. And Kunjun kind of just wins the fight, and the little girl disappears. And we go outside and we start talking to Morax. We kind of leave all these little clues behind, like Morax. We thank Morax for his gift of sight. He says that he's forged of the elemental crystal, bearer of weight and memories of the earth. Morax refers to him as the earth dragon. Again, going back to the whole sovereign piece. And kind of like, we just kind of like talk it out like two old friends. And he's like, okay, my power is kind of dissipating, and they just kind of like, I hope this doesn't happen again, but you know what? It's probably gonna, because every time people keep fucking with the ley lines, it hurts me and wakes me up. So he's like, you're bad neighbors. And Morax is like, well, I'm not the Archon anymore. Like, there's nothing I can do about that. And Azhdaha is like, well, what's going to happen then? And he's like, the people will be able to take care of it. Like, that's fine. They can do it. And he's like, all right.
The people are probably fucking it up.
Yeah. He's like, the people who keep waking my ass up are going to be able to get rid of me.
He's like, well, I hope so. Otherwise, Child is going to destroy everyone.
Yeah.
Is this where we get the quote from Zhongli about erosion, or?
Yeah, Kunzhen just falls to the ground, is passed out. Uncle Dai comes over. We give him the little scoop. He starts taking Kunzhen back to Liyue Harbor. So this way, his kind of thing is over. He gets to go back to being a blacksmith. And Zhongli then tells Traveler the whole story, because like Kunzhen did the whole, like, told us the story as well, but like Zhongli kind of goes through it a little bit more. You know, says that that he sealed Azhdaha. He put Azhdaha in that seal after a great battle within the chasm, all throughout the chasm, which almost made it sound like that's where some of those like crazy holes and stuff are, because it was like, this was a big ass battle. And Zhongli is like, basically, like, even Azhdaha at the time basically says like, I know that you came to me as a friend and not as an assassin, like you didn't try and kill me. But Zhongli is like, even as strong as I really am, I would not have been able to do it. So when he sealed Azhdaha, he had Adepti help.
Yeah.
Because he couldn't do it all on his own. Again, going to the fact that this
Dragon
is the
Sovereign?
Dragon. Point. So this is where kind of we learn all the details, and probably the stuff that you're all alluding to too, about how it happened, how Morax met Azhdaha, and all those.
I was just going to say that the Adepti we know were Moon Carver and Mountain Shaper, and a unidentified third Adepti, but a lot of people think it was Marchosius, who's Gwoba, because in a cutscene during one of the events, like, it shows Gwoba like riding the shoulder of Azhdaha. So people think maybe like they were friends, and like he had to go and like help them close his friend up. It's so sad.
Yeah, because like, I mean, it is a sad thing. Like, I mean, he was losing his mind and they had to like put him away, but they didn't. Yeah, like Zhongli, outside of, I think he has a good quote that says, a heart of stone is still a heart, which I was like, damn.
I will say something I found a little weird about the erosion in this situation is that the whole thing is like that Azhdaha starts forgetting the people of Liyue, and so he starts attacking them as they continue to explore the chasm. But then he holds this like 1,000-year grudge.
Yeah.
Like Morax, where he's like, Morax, you have betrayed me. The people have betrayed me. Like, you can't remember. Literally, it says he forgot Morax's face.
Yeah.
But then he's like, you fucking betrayed me.
Yeah.
I'm going to come get you. What type of erosion does he have? It's like selective.
But that's why I think he's a sovereign, because the gods, if you think about it, like the gods are sort of taking the place of the dragons. And so it would make sense if he has this sort of underlying resentment towards archons.
It's almost like the thing that kept him alive in a way. Like he held on to this pain, like he felt like Morax was a traitor to him. And it's almost like he grew onto that fascination and probably made it a lot worse, because he willingly put himself in the seal. Like, he didn't fight them, but he was just like, oh shit.
Yeah, and their relationship had to have been so conflicting. If he is, I mean, even if he's not a sovereign, just being like a dragon, like, you know, a part of the race of beings that were wiped out basically by the gods. We know that Zhongli was really nice to him as a dragon, like what gave him the ability to see, sort of like brought him up to the surface of Teyvat, because, you know, he lived underground, and sort of put him in touch with humanity, and like was guiding him to be like involved in, you know, the outside world. So, you know, I could see that it's like when he loses his mind, it falls back to those like base instincts of like, you took over my world and like committed genocide.
So base trauma?
Yeah. But like, it's, I think at the time of doing the quest, because, you know, you're in Liyue at this point, I don't think I really knew too much about the dragons and things like that. And I was a little confused by it. Like, I was like, okay, this guy was obviously really important. But I think it almost makes a little bit more sense now being in Fontaine and learning everything about Neuvillette and the fact that he is the dragon sovereign, but he's not the original. Like, it passed on. And I think that wasn't something that I've ever really explored until it came out in that quest.
But to bounce off of that, even if if he's not the original sovereign and just like one of the Dragon Lords and, it just has his own memories, looking at IRL depictions of like dementia where certain memories are lost, but memories of trauma are deeply ingrained. So maybe this moment where he is locked away and he sees this as somewhat of a betrayal by Zhongli, that it's just like that sticks because it's so deeply rooted.
Mm-hmm.
So there's this interesting video that is sort of like a behind the scenes of the concept of Azhdaha by the developers. And they specifically note that like erosion was designed basically to be a storytelling device about the conflict between ordinary people and nature. And it's so interesting. I think it's sort of about old age in a way. And we know that Zhongli has to deal with erosion too. It's just, coming a little bit slower than it did for Ozzy. But it's an interesting device to sort of tell that story of like, I had to seal my friend away because he lost his mind, but I also know that that's going to happen to me eventually. And that's why he had to step down as the Archon.
It's really interesting.
He even like gave some of his powers to Azhdaha to help try and stop the erosion, but basically it was kind of like futile, I guess. But I think it was also, like you're saying, he had to think of it from, this is going to happen to me.
Yeah.
And he says that while he's telling the traveler and stuff about it, he says, even I can't avoid erosion, but there's something I understand better than most. When the door opens, it's time to leave. So he had the opportunity because the Tsaritsa wanted his gnosis, and he was like, peace out. I know it's my time.
So B brought up the idea of like the difference between like mortals and immortals. And there's always this idea of like gods don't die, they're forgotten.
Mm.
And Zhongli knows he's like slowly being forgotten about because it's just a matter of time. But with all the dragons, it's literally a bygone age. It's been thousands of years. There are very few people that remember anything about the dragons.
That's very true. I did just want to, though, before we jump too far into all of our theories and stuff, we've only really covered Azhdaha in Zhongli's story.
Mhm.
So I think we should actually backtrack to what we know about Azhdaha, like factually, which isn't too much, of course. We know that Azhdaha is a dragon. He's referred to very often as a dragon. We know that dragons come from a Vishap form to start with. And we know that Azhdaha, like nothing was really going on with him. And then one day there were like earthquakes happening and they didn't know what was causing them. So Morax, scooted on over to figure out what was happening. And he found out that this dragon, Azhdaha, had awoken. And every time he moved, an earthquake was happening. And Morax was like, all right, you need to chill out. What is going on? And he told him about how he was blind. Azhdaha had no sight. He was very curious about the surface. And so Morax not only granted him vision, not to be confused with a vision, but he also brought him to the surface. And he said, listen, you can see, you can chill up here, but you got to stay cool. You protect me, you protect the people, you can stay up here. You do anything against that, you're back underground. Azhdaha lived in peace with the people for many years, actually befriending Morax and becoming a beloved protector of Liyue. He was very partial to blacksmiths, which is fun because his positive side of his conscience does take over Yunkun, who is a blacksmith or knows of blacksmith things. And then eventually the erosion hit and he was chilling in the chasm. And he started to feel like the people exploring the chasm were attacking him. He then flipped out, got mad. Zhongli and the Adepti had to subdue him, as you guys mentioned. The fight started in the chasm and went all the way up to Nantianman and then to the right above it next to Mount Hulao, where eventually they were able to subdue him and lock him under Dragon Queller, which is a very magical looking tree. Azhdaha then decided that he was betrayed, even though he could not remember Morax's face, and that he would pull a Eula seeking vengeance on Morax one day soon. And then we have everything you guys just mentioned. I think that's really important just to throw out there.
Yeah, for sure.
Because we really don't know his origins prior to being locked underground the first time.
Mhm.
We do know that many years ago, there was a draconic cataclysm. I'm sorry, a draconic calamity, as they call it. It is actually written in the description of the Primo Vishap, and it says that this draconic calamity destroyed Tianche Valley. That is where you can actually find the Primo Vishap that we like to call the Primo Vishap. It's the one who changes elements every day. And specifically about Tianche Valley, it says, as to how it came to be the way it is now, it seems to have had something to do with the rampage of an ancient dragon king. There aren't a lot of details available about the incident, but legend has it that Rex Lapis and his adepti eventually imprisoned it with some sort of adepti realm. So, we don't really know when that draconic calamity specifically happened.
I mean, would that not be the primordial one coming in and like kicking all the dragons' asses?
Well, no, because it says that it has to do with the rampage of an ancient dragon king, and then Rex Lapis and the adepti imprisoned it. So it almost makes it sound like it's when Azhdaha went crazy in the chasm.
Oh, okay.
And then he trekked up that way on the map. And if you look at the map,
Did you turn left at the boob?
well, no, if you start at the chasm and you go right, like the Lingzhu Pass and everything is very deeply valleyed up until Qianke Valley, Nian Tianman, and then you get to where Azhdaha is next to Mount Hulao. It all looks like it was like possibly carved out by a fight. But it also could be something that we don't know about. And it could be the first time that Azhdaha was locked away too. We don't know. But that's it. You guys can go into all the Dragon Lord stuff now. I just wanted to get that out there.
Well, here's an interesting fact. Azhdaha means dragon in Persian language, and in Persian and Iranian mythology, Azhdaha is a giant snake or lizard with wings. And it was talked about in a book as far back as like 1160. And I'm not even going to try and say the name because I would butcher it so much. But it's the wonders of creatures and marvels of creation in a wonderfully looking lot of vowels and consonants that I can't do.
None of us speak Farsi or Urdu. So
Yeah.
it makes it really difficult.
Yeah, but they're depicted as like normal snakes that have lived over 100 years and they grew 30 meters. And at that point, they start harassing creatures. And God's like, fuck that. And he takes them and throws them in the sea, I guess constantly, because I don't think they all lived at the same time. But, in the sea, they grew even larger, like 10,000 meters. And they grew wings, kind of like fins of a fish. And then that's where they became like, in this mythology, that's kind of where the dragons kind of come from, and then they eventually used those wings and started to fly. But they believe that if you ate the heart of one, it would bring you courage and bravery, and that their skins would heal heartache from like a loved one and stuff. And if you bury their head, like it makes good soil, like all those kinds of things. Like, so like dragons, while they were like vicious and apparently beating up people before they were thrown in the ocean, they still actually had like people still admired them and used them for stuff like that. In mythology, it's not actually real, but I'm going to talk about it as if the dragons were really there in 1160.
Well, it's part of folklore, but like we can also see like parts going through Genshin. When we do these weekly bosses, we take specific loot drops, and they tend to be body parts of these beasts and or child and Raiden. And with Azhdaha, we have the Gilded Scale and the Dragon's Lord Crown and the Blood Jade Branch. And a lot of that is very similar to their scales, and their skin is really, really good at healing wounds. And while like the head, the branch, is really good for soil and for growing things. It's also interesting that in Western mythology, dragon scales are like the best armor. And while dragon blood, if you bathe in dragon blood, you're immune. And if you drink it, you become immortal.
Al, you didn't say your thing.
Wait, did you just say bathe?
Yeah,
in
you
his
said a
blood?
regular bait is in his blood.
I know. I know.
Wait, why aren't we getting it? Why are you still being like, yeah, I know? Al!
Because I wanted to get to another thing real quick because it's about Rostam.
Hmm.
I'm going to include it like in Persian folklore, specifically because it's written in the Epic of Kings. Rostam is basically Heracles. He has a lot more labors than 7, but one of the labors he has is he kills a dragon.
Who's Heracles?
Hercules.
Oh,
Hercules. I just say Heracles because I am a stickler, but he has to atone for certain sins. And Rostam is also one who has to atone for certain sins because in some cases he's killed both his half-brother and his son versus Heracles kills, his entire family. So it's an interesting parallel of like Rostam fights white demons, white elephants, like lots of differing like monsters that you would see in like Persian folklore or basically Middle Eastern folklore at the time. And, some translations of the Epic of Kings throws in different monsters. It just depends on where it was translated. But I love how a lot of it always relates back to Tiamat, which, here we go. So in the Babylonian creation myth, Tiamat is like god of chaos. She is she basically created the waters of the world of the cosmos through a sacred marriage. And that in and of itself, she is the goddess of primordial chaos.
Ooh.
Primordial, if you will. Lots of times she's identified as like a sea serpent or a dragon.
Okay, Osile Beisht.
Mm-hmm. And with multiple different sources of media, specifically Dungeons and Dragons, you'll see Tiamat as Tiamat, and usually they're a very large red dragon. However, what I really enjoy is that the creation myth has something it alludes to, and I'm trying to figure out how it really relates to Durin, but it does, and which is why I'm like, is Tiamat gold? Or is gold in Genshin kind of like a stand-in for Tiamat? And so the creation myth is that Tiamat bears the first generation of deities with her husband Abzu, and basically those generations of deities try and kill him and usurp his throne. Once they do that, they make war, and then they're all killed. She's enraged. She wars against her husband's murderers, bringing forth she makes a bunch of monsters. In that, she makes dragons, and then she's slain by her son Enki.
What a brat.
Mm-hmm. And then the storm god Marduk. But before she brings forth the monsters, including the first of the dragons, she fills the bodies of dragons with poison instead of blood.
Sounds like Durin.
Yep. Marduk then integrates elements of her body into the heavens and the earth.
Such a thing Gold would do.
So was Albedo going to kill Gold?
Maybe.
Stop. Well,
Maybe.
That'd be okay. I'd be okay with that one. I immediately went on the defense. I was like, shut up. Stop.
But it reminded me a lot of how the original indigenous creatures of Teyvat were dragons and Vishaps. And the purity of that is that they were kind of untouched, and they're the first of their kind. So they're kind of like the first generation of deities here. And then they kill their dad in this case. And then their mom kills them and, goes on a rampage and makes more monsters. And I'm trying to find more ways to relate this of like how this ties in with the creation of Teyvat becoming a human occupied world. And it could just be that these are, dragons that were the first of the generation, and we are fourth the monsters that were brought by the primordial one. Who knows? But I love that, like, when you think of primordial chaos, the term primordial chaos, as the dictionary puts it, or at least Wikipedia, let's say that it's mythological void state. It's there is no order, and we see this a lot in Greek mythology, in the creation myths, as well as Egyptian mythology. And then I got to thinking, is that the Dark Sea? Is that the Sea Quanta?
Oh,
Wait,
no.
so who was Rostam again in this scenario?
So Rostam is like a folk hero, like Hercules is.
Okay.
He's part of this whole epic, the Epic of Kings.
And for anyone who doesn't remember, Rostam was a prominent figure in Mondstadt history. He was like BFFs with Arundhalen, who was the Grandmaster of Mondstadt at the time, and he was Signora's lover.
Mm-hmm. And Rostam in the Epic of Kings also shares not a very linear path as Rostam in Genshin, but has a very similar fate and as much tragedy as most folklore does. So I I found it really interesting when researching just Azhdaha and like what are the myths, what are the like just stories of dragons from Iran, from Iraq, just trying to look and see all of that. And here comes this name Rostam that we know quite well. And I find it very poignant that when we do find these what seemingly unrelated connections in Genshin pops up, I'm like, shit. Shit,
Yeah.
there's more meaning to this. And I haven't quite put my finger on it yet.
There's a lot of weird questions like that. And it's like, sometimes you wonder where Hoyo gets their information.
I
Like,
mean,
what makes them decide to pull from certain resources, so to say? Like when we talk about Alberich, when we talk about the Ravengers, like they all have these, possible IRL connections to folklore too.
I always found it like really interesting that learning that, like Tiff said, that Azhdaha is Farsi and Urdu for dragon. Then I'm looking at the history of the Middle East with China, and there's deep history as we've talked about in previous episodes of how like cultural transmutation happens all the time. And I'm like, ooh.
All right. Well, since we've gone through the background a little bit and the cultural references, now is your time to shine, Brandon. I'm not going to stop the talk of the Dragon Lords now.
Let's go. Dragon Sovereigns.
I know I've been shutting it down just to get facts out because I know this could go.
No, I basically said it already. Like, I think that there is a lot of credence to the idea that he could be the Geo Sovereign, but there's no proof whatsoever. It's just my personal theory.
Yeah, no, I think that a lot of people share it though, because Morax calls him the Geo Dragon, but I mean, he's made of stone and lives in Liyue, so you could take it either way. But like I said before, I think that even the Neverlet story about him being a replacement kind of a thing could even be. But trying to go back to, and I know I've mentioned this before, I have a hard time with the timing of things. Like, to me, the dragons were here, the primordial one said shoo, and then all of a sudden there were cons. Like, to me, it happens in a day, but it didn't. Did the primordial one, when they put all of them in the ground, and that's why like Zhongli later on like unearthed the Geo Dragon Sovereign. Like, it could be so many things.
One thing that's interesting that is in that developer video that I was talking about earlier. First of all, Ozzy was like being developed as early as 1.1. Like, that's when they started figuring out like how to design him. So I thought that was cool. But they also mentioned that he is one of the countless beings defeated during the Archon War, which I'm like, okay, so there were dragons fighting in the Archon War. That's very interesting to me.
That's what makes me think that Azhdaha isn't the original Geo Dragon, but could have. I think he's a reincarnation.
Reincarnation, heir, whichever one. But I think there is more evidence than we think to point him to that he is the now, like he is the Geo Sovereign. And that's because he is the leader of the Geovishaps, and the Vishaps will only follow a Dragon Lord, one of the sovereigns.
Well, the question then also becomes, we learned, thanks to Nuvi, Keepaw, whatever you prefer, that in order for a Dragon Lord to get their full power back, the Archon of that same element has to give up the Divine Throne. Did Zhongli give up the Divine Throne? We know he gave away his Gnosis. We know that he, quote unquote, died to purposely step down, but has he given up the Divine Throne?
Oh, like, you think he's got to like go to Celestia and be like, all right, I'm done?
I think he's got to legitimately destroy the throne.
And I think he has to die.
Oh,
yes.
Okay.
I just figured it's the Gnosis, no?
No, because the Gnosis, that's just the Archon, like part of the Archon's power, apart from the third descender. The throne has to be completely destroyed. And that means the Archon, or what would be considered the Archon, has to be destroyed.
True, because that's why Focalor did her whole thing.
Yes.
Because the Gnosis was already gone. Like, it was already in someone else's hands. But because had Zhongli giving the Gnosis to Signora been what was stepping down or destroying the throne, Azhdaha would have probably had, one of those large moments like we saw with Peepaw, like having an epic moment, but he never did. So I think the throne, he passed it down, possibly just to the people of Liyue and or to the, oh God, I keep forgetting how to say the
Qixing.
yeah, Qixing. Yes.
I think that the thing is, since Zhongli is not dead, if Azhdaha is the new or original Geo Dragon Lord, he cannot have his full power because Zhongli is alive.
But that
Yeah.
also would explain why he has this like resentment, instinctual resentment towards Zhongli.
Right, despite if he remembers him or not with the erosion. Yeah. I also, it's not necessarily Azhdaha that makes me question this, but since we're talking about it makes me wonder what happened in Inazuma and Sumeru. Because in Inazuma, their Archon died. But we don't know if Makoto gave up the Divine Throne or truly passed it to A. I guess we know that she passed it to A. Maybe?
I always took it as they were sharing it because they were, you know, the twin archons. Even though
Well, then Nahida's the question too.
Makoto
then.
was sort of like, you know, the one who had it together more and was like doing the job.
The question is the Electro Sovereign even reincarnated or like become strong enough to even take that place?
Yeah.
That's true. It also makes me really question Inkanomiya, because Inkanomiya, the people who lived there, they foresaw the future and predicted that the Hydro Dragon would be born again, but as a human. So we know then that Inkanomiya people, at least probably 600 years ago, made that assumption, because we know Neuvillette kind of appears around the time of the Cataclysm.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little after.
This isn't necessarily about Azhdaha, but it's at the end of the story, and it pissed me off again watching it when I revisited for this episode. We outright asked Zhongli, you know anything about our brother? And he goes, oh, yeah, nah, I can't talk about that.
Oh, yeah.
And we're like, what do you mean you can't talk about it? Like, what? Like, we tell him we know about Dainsleif, we know about Conria, we know about the Cataclysm, and he's just like, can't say nothing. He goes, I understand, and I have to apologize. I can understand why this seems like really mean to you, especially because we're friends. And he's like, this is my contract. He made a contract so long ago that he would never talk about it, and he can't tell us anything. But like he starts to say like certain things like, you know, about witnessing and searching for things and how nothing's inconsequential. Like I think he's trying to give us some hints.
Yeah, he tells us that there are many secrets below the earth that only the traveler can reveal.
What kind of shit is that outside of Azhdaha? Maybe we got to bring Azhdaha back.
I want him to come back. I want him to have a happy ending. I want the dragons back, damn it.
No dragon's getting a happy ending in this game. They've already been subject to not happy endings.
No, I think Neuvillette is going to have a happy ending.
Okay,
Hell
that's
yeah.
different.
And if I have
feel
to give
like-
it to him myself, I will.
What massage parlor are you taking him to?
Wherever the perfumer goes.
Oh my goodness.
Engineer.
I hope that we see Kunjin again. Like, I hope that there's something in Liyue that like we got to go get something from a blacksmith and we go like meet up with him.
Mhm.
I would love that. You know, we were hanging out recently with the Shade Chamber while Beefy did the newest Fontaine event with the muskets. And I was saying how it was like such a lost opportunity because you could bring back these like random NPCs. Like you don't need to keep giving me new NPCs. I've met people in these towns. I have interacted. And that's one of the characters in Liyue that imagine you just ran into him during Lantern Rite. That'd be so cool.
Yeah, because he has no memory of it, we think.
Zhongling visited him.
What?
It's heavily implied that she's like making a gift for Xinyan and she visits a bespectacled blacksmith.
Oh.
So it's sort of implied to be him. And then Yunjin is like very interested and is like, I'm going to put that in my next play.
Oh, is that during the Shenhe?
I forget. It's a quest called Blazon Trails. So, but I
Okay.
forget what that was about. But it has to be him because Zhongling mentions that he was like ill and disoriented for a time, but then recovered miraculously.
Oh.
And he's suddenly able to tell the difference between valuable and worthless stones just by looking at them.
And I apologize. Kunjin did not have a crazy ass mustache. I was thinking about the musket.
Morris?
Yeah, I was thinking about Morris and the musket thing.
Oh God,
That's
Morris's
sustache.
mustache.
Is that what we called it? Sustache? or Beefy called it.
Thank God Suspedo doesn't have a sustache. Where he's gonna show up wearing Paimon's like investigator Paimon outfit.
Everybody needs that. Everybody needs Detective Paimon back, whether you know it or not.
Absolutely.
I want to get like romance novel Paimon,
Oh my
where she
gosh.
just like starts flipping her hair like very like alluringly at the traveler. All of her book eras, just kind of horror film.
Yeah.
Paimon with a knife. I feel like that's just the end of the game. But that being said, I do think that's all the time we have for today. Thank you, travelers, for going back in time, possibly time as ancient as mountains themselves, to talk about Azhdaha or Azzy Baby, whatever you want to call him. Next week, we are going to be talking about the yokai event that happened in Inazuma. I'm not even going to try to pronounce it. I will know by next week. If you like this episode and you want to let us know what you thought, you can send us an email at talesoftevatpod@gmail.com. Follow us on Instagram, Tales of Teyvat Pod, or follow us on Twitter, Tales of Teyvat. Until then, safe journeys, travelers. We'll see you next time.
Bye, gecko nerds.
Ash is like, you talking to me?